Time to catch up with our guy, Mike LaTulip, our weekly chat, and we get to talk about a game and games. Mike LaTulip, as Illinois defeats Eastern Illinois 80-52. We'll ask you about Sencire Harris deciding to redshirt, a rare thing these days, especially in the age of the portal, and what goes from there, how that impacts the team. But not a great start. The starters looked like they got up for this one as much as they got up for Kansas. Mike, how does that happen? Like, take me into the mind of a player there.
I was really curious to see how they would come out. It's so unique to get that type of litmus test in October, pass it, and then go into the easier competition in non-conference. So I thought it was a great test. How are you going to come out? And they did not pass that test in the first 5-10 minutes. And we know how important that is against those type of non-conference opponents, because if you let them feel like they're in it in the first 5 minutes, they feel like they're in it. And there's a few guys on the Illinois team that should know better than that. Marcus Damas, Justin Harmon, you've been those guys. You know the type of effort that you play with. You want to knock off the big dog. So and there were just a lot of reactive play on the glass, defensively, offensively. So yeah, that was concerning. I thought it was a wake-up call for a lot of guys, because you do that against Marquette, you're getting ran off the floor. Mm-hmm. They're pouncing on you and they're staying on you. Those loaded mid-major teams, eventually, if you just keep swinging away, even if it's 10 minutes into the game, you can regain the lead, you can take the lead, you can run away with it. But yeah, I thought they figured it out in the second half, late first half, and there was a reason for that. I thought some guys came in and gave them a boost, but yeah, I thought Brad Underwood sent a message in a few different ways to a few different guys that's not going to fly this season.
Yeah, I mean, Coleman Hawkins played 12 minutes, 13 minutes. Terrence Shannon didn't get going until late in the first half, but when he did, he took over the game. What was most concerning from you, and what do you think this week of practice was like after that game?
Yeah, I think this week of practice should just reaffirm that you're nowhere near where you want to be. We said that last year after UCLA and Texas. I thought we were on that pretty early, where it's like, yeah, I mean, but you still were down 15 in those games, and then you had some superhuman performances that turned him around. But it was bad to start this one. Coleman Hawkins, you know how big of a Coleman Hawkins fan I am. Coleman Hawkins was bad to start this game. He takes a ill-advised three with 15 seconds on the shot clock, takes another bad one a couple possessions later. He turns it over on their second possession after he took the bad shot on their first possession. And then, where he really hangs his hat is with his IQ and defensively. And there were just a couple times where he's in drop coverage and he's just abandoning drop coverage. They had a wide open layup at the beginning of that game, and he just hugged his man and didn't get into drop and wasn't fronting all the time as a post guy. So that type of stuff's concerning, and you can't have that lack of focus from that type of guy. And I think he knows that, and it's better to learn that in game one. Because the other thing about this team this year is there's more guys now, where if you don't want to do your job, we got some other guys that are hungry and want to, regardless of who you are. So I thought that was telling. I thought Brad Underwood, he sent a message with Coleman, and Coleman's been mature over the years and has received it and usually has bounced back. But this week of practice, it should just be, let's keep that hunger, right? Whatever hunger you had going into Kansas, just keep it consistent. And I'll be really interested to see how they bounce back against an Oakland team that has some talent. I mean, these are Rocket Watts. Everybody's familiar with him from Michigan State. He's well-traveled, but a good player. That's the type of guys that they get. And they're just, irrational confidence kind of guys. So if you let them stay in it the first 5 minutes, you're going to be in for a game, because they gave Ohio State a game. They gave Michigan a game a few years ago. This is what Oakland does. They have kind of retread high major guys, and they just go out there and play free.
You've heard us talk about HomeField Apparel since the start of the season. There are a lot of collegiate apparel brands out there, but we wanted to partner with HomeField because their designs are the best out there. Some of Illini Inquirer's favorites are the basketball ringer tee, the rose tee, and the 1980s long sleeve with the script Illini. It's great. Be sure to check out homefieldapparel.com, filter by Illinois, and see what we're talking about. And our listeners get an exclusive deal using code Illini23. Using that code Illini23 gets you 15% off your first order. We all know you're wearing Illini gear, so if you're in need of a refresh, we really think that you should check out HomeField Apparel, which has the best designs, and these shirts, guys, are really comfortable. Their designs are super unique, and a lot of thought goes into each concept. There's really nothing else on the market like what HomeField is doing. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com and use code Illini23 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. All right. One really big positive from this game, of course, is freshman Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. Barely played against Kansas, but he showed a lot, both energy-wise and what he can do offensively. Mike, what stuck out to you with the freshman leading the team with 18 points, adding 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block? What stood out?
He was a big reason they took that lead. When he came into the game, they were still trailing by a considerable amount, and just it wasn't only the offensive jolt that he provided, but we'll break it down in the film. But just there were some things defensively that were really encouraging. Now I think it's one game, right? And that's what he has to fight as well. Is, hey man, you haven't arrived either. And the thing that I'm going to be monitoring throughout the season, because there's going to be a temptation with how talented he is and how athletic he is. There's going to be a temptation to put more on his plate. And can you fight that if you're the staff? Because I think you're getting a lot out of Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn when you keep the main thing the main thing. And right now, the main thing is come in, don't think, downhill, pressure on the defense, fly around defensively. Once you start trying to put more on his plate and make him process and orchestrate and set the table, that's just a lot for a freshman. That, for a guy that doesn't come naturally to. And he can make some of those plays at times, but can you fight that temptation if you're the staff? Because like I said, he's talented enough and he's athletic enough to warrant that. So, and look, but there were 2 instances in the game that I was really encouraged by. One was in the first half, he had just had the tip in and then the layup in transition, 4 straight points. And we've seen this kind of barrage that he has. He scores in bunches. And then he gets a drift pass from, I think, Terrence Shannon, and Luke Goody is wide open on the one more, like wide open. But he's like, oh, man, I got it going, catch, shoot. Good shot. Great one is to Luke Goody. And right at the end of the half, he gets the same exact play, drift pass. And this time he hits Luke Goody for the one more. Luke Goody hits a 3. Super encouraging to just see that. Maybe some guys told him, Luke Goody might have told him, and you're receptive and you can implement that in real time. And then the second one was in the second half, he's flying around and he tries, man. He tries defensively. He can be a little man conscious sometimes. And that's what I worry about maybe long-term when you have to be good in help and with your man. But there was a time where he was flying around and he got kind of late to a closeout and he jumped to contest and the guy made a shot and he threw his head back in the air. And you don't want to make that a habit, those type of reactions, but I at least know that you care that you got scored on. So that was also encouraging. But I'll tie this all in by saying you were a pest defensively. You had some great offensive rebounds. You were flying around. Are you doing those things when you don't have 14, 16, 18 points? You don't have it cooking offensively. To me, that's the true test of the maturity of a freshman. A lot of guys can do it when they got it rolling offensively, but when you don't have it rolling offensively, are you still doing those other things? Because that's what's going to keep you on the floor.
I loved what you said about the staff keeping it simple, because it reminds me of Jaden Epps' year last year. Jaden was really good when he was just go score, be downhill, go get buckets and be you. When he had to be point guard, it became a lot tougher for Jaden Epps.
Yeah, there's just a lot more that you're putting on your shoulders. And honestly, it makes what Braden Smith does pretty impressive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
After him managing that last year, and it wasn't perfect for Braden, and I know he's got an incredible guy to throw it into sometimes, but yeah, Jaden, think about the start of the year, main event, that Virginia game. It was very reminiscent of how Dre is used. I think Dre's more talented than Jaden. He's definitely more athletic than Jaden. I think he plays with a little bit more fire than Jaden. I mean, last year, and I don't want to do a whole Jaden Epps thing, but the thing was oh man, look how even keel he is. And then all of a sudden, you get to being the point guard, you're like, okay, maybe a little too even keel. Like, let's show something. And I think Dre has that. So if he did ever get down the road into a leadership position, he can probably be a vocal guy and bring guys along. But you also feel like you have to probably temper that at some points with Dre, because he does get pretty fired up. But absolutely, I think you have to keep things simple for him. I think that's the way you're going to get the most out of him, especially this year. And then, maybe next year you start to put a little bit more on his plate. You give him an off season doing that stuff. I mean, that should be the natural progression thing. So you don't want to put the cart before the horse with him. And he got off to a great start, but shoot, we got 30 plus more of these, and he's got to bring it every night.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to break down Terrence Shannon and his takeover, which happens. We know how good he is, and I'd like to see him start the game off that way. That's a continual conversation. But the bench, not just Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, seemed to give energy. I thought Dane Danger could have got more touches from his teammates, but I thought he brought something. And Luke Goody, man, I don't want to overlook what he can mean to a team, especially coming off a bench and a team that was really struggling to shoot early on. He got him going a little bit.
Yeah, and Luke, when you look at Luke as like a 6th or 7th guy on this team, that's a pretty darn good 6th or 7th guy. And look, he may never be like an all Big Ten type of guy, but very similar to a Jacob Grandison, he could be a reason why you win a Big Ten title, because he comes in, it's not about him. He makes shots. He is in the right place defensively. He competes, and that getting that type of effort on a night-to-night basis, last year it really stuck out because there were guys that were inconsistent with it, but he is so consistent with it. So it's a reason why he plays. It's a reason why, when Coleman Hawkins isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing, then you can move things around and have a guy Luke Goody playing the 4 or having him in different spots. That's just the type of talent and toughness that you have from some of these guys in this team, and Luke Goody is no exception. He's said it for 3 years now. We're going on 3 years. You just really like what he brings to the table because, it's what every winning team needs.
I know a lot of these minutes came late. I know it came against an Eastern Illinois team that is not that big outside of Jermaine Hamlin. But Amani Hansberry, every time he's played, man, he's made an impact, especially on the glass. 7 points, 8 rebounds in 14 minutes. Can he get a role on this team this year? What does that look like, Mike?
I think he can. He probably needs some other things to happen. He doesn't necessarily control his own destiny on that. Now he controls the things that he does every day, but just by way of Coleman Hawkins and Dane Danger, you probably need, you need Dane Danger to probably not do what he's supposed to do. Or if Dane Danger gets disgruntled with Coleman Hawkins getting a lot of minutes at the 5, that could be an opportunity for him. But the encouraging thing is it looks like it doesn't matter to Amani. And I say that not in a negative way. I just think that regardless of if you put him in for 2 minutes or you put him in for 10 minutes, you're getting the same Amani Hansberry. And there's a lot of value in that. And I think there's a certain trust that staffs have as well. And I think I was talking to Bardo about this a couple of weeks ago, but there is a emotion and a feeling that you give a coach when he locks eyes with you when he looks down the bench. And it's either a feeling of trust or it's a feeling of, I don't know if I want to put this guy in this moment. And the more you're a guy that does what you're supposed to do, like Amani Hansberry is, the more you're going to have those moments where you're relied upon if someone's in foul trouble or if it's a late game. And we just need, hey, how can we get some effort? We need more rebounding. I mean, he fills a lot of those different holes. Now it can be marginal at times, but that's what you need. You need these guys and everybody playing their respective roles to try to get the most out of your team. So really encouraging. I want to see him do it against better competition. The idea is that he's going to improve just like Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, that once the competition increases, you also are, increasing your ability as a high major player, as a player on this Illinois team. So I'm pretty excited to monitor that and see what he can do with the minutes that he gets this year.
This episode of the Illini Inquirer podcast is presented by Underdog Sports. We see a lot of you are downloading Underdog Sports, using the promo code, and having fun, which we love to see. If you haven't already checked out Underdog Sports, be sure to do so. It's super easy to use. You go on the app, go pick whether favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total than what is listed. For example, Travis Kelce, He's very popular these days. If his number is set at 50 receiving yards and you know Taylor Swift is in the house, you may feel confident he's going to go way higher than the number. Do that with 2 to 5 different players and you're in business. If you go 5 for 5, you can 20x your money. So sign up today with promo code Illini and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code Illini to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. There are a lot of fantasy companies out there, but we decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. You must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org. The biggest news out of this game probably, Mike, was the guy who didn't play, Sencire Harris. We're wondering why the game. He wasn't playing. And afterwards, Brad Underwood says that he wants to redshirt. It's rare. So when things are rare, you get a little skeptical of what's going to happen here. Is Sencire Harris going to be part of the long term? But what do you make of this? If Sencire decides to redshirt and, whether it's for Illinois or not, but I think Jaden Shutt is doing this at Duke as well. He's going to redshirt and develop, and we'll see whether these guys stay or not. But what do you make of this decision for Sencire Harris?
I have a lot of thoughts about it. I just, one, I think it's the right move just for him and his development. I don't think there's any question about that. I think there was always going to be someone that was the odd man out this year. And I'm not saying that that's sincere, but
it felt like that was once Justin Harmon, Drake. Yeah.
Felt like it's so I get it. I get it from his perspective. But the reason why I think you hear people say, oh man, you just don't see this nowadays is because the natural pecking order of a roster in college basketball has changed. And before, if you redshirt your sophomore year with the idea of, hey, Damas, Shannon, Harmon, they're going to be gone next year. There's a lot of risk involved with that because there isn't this escalator of pecking order on college basketball rosters anymore. It's not, hey, the freshmen and sophomores learn behind the juniors and seniors, and then the juniors and seniors leave, and then the freshmen and sophomores become those junior and seniors, and then the cycle repeats itself with guys that we bring in. You could lose Damas and Shannon and Harmon, but the nature of college basketball says they're going to go out and get some more transfers. That's just going to happen. So you can take a year off, and I think you're spending it with a guy in Adam Fletcher that's better than anyone in the country at develop. I say that I was around him. I'm not the easiest guy to put mass onto or have me fill out. He made me looking like a damn MMA fighter, and I was more athletic than I ever was. I was dunking. I was, there's a lot of value for him doing this, but the risk involved is you don't know what that roster is going to look like next year. So you could be the odd man out this year, but when Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, some of these guys come back, you go and get some guys out of the portal. What's it look like? I know Brad said after the game, hey, he's a 10-minute per game guy. That could be a 25-minute per game guy. Could be. But if we go out and reload in the portal like they have, and this Illinois team has done a really good job of that.
And they will again.
And they will. And so what does that look like? Because for me with Sencire, it's less about, hey, he needs to put weight on. Sure. I mean, I think there's things that he's quick enough. He can overcome some things just by how hard he plays and all that. But, if he wants to maximize who he is as a basketball player, he's got to remove some of the stubbornness from his game. And you aren't the best shooter right now, and you continue to take threes. And again, I've mentioned this, Ty Rodgers understands who he is. And there's a reason why Ty Rodgers is playing a lot. Is the more that you find out your identity and the more that you're true to that, the more you can play to your strengths and the more you give yourself an opportunity to be on the floor. So I think it goes beyond the weight room for Sencire. And I say that I really like the kid. And that's why I'm not trying to, demean him at all or throw shade at his game. I think he's a good player. There's certain things that if he wants to be on the floor more consistently, I think those are the things that he has to do. So I'm interested to see. I mean, I redshirted. It was a little bit unique. It was my senior year. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to be an Illini for life. And then I wanted to go test myself in my fifth year. he could leave after the season. I mean, let's call it what it is. He absolutely could.
Could leave midseason.
Could leave midseason. Like you don't know. And yeah, so those are a few different thoughts that I have about it, but you just time will tell.
Yeah, I want to get to the Illini side of this thing, but I mean, for him, it makes sense. Like he's got options now. I mean, to have 100 minutes in a season feels like it could be a waste of a season for him in the long term with what he wants to do. So maybe if he stays through the spring, then he's can look and see what Illinois does and decide if he wants to go to the portal or not. But losing Shannon and Domask, Illinois is going to be big game hunting. Like they are going to be hunting for a star wing, right? So that is clear. But so maybe you can see that. Maybe he gets better and he decides he wants to stay. Illinois sees what he does in practice. I think he'll be a very good practice player for Illinois over the next several months. But then there's the Illinois side of this, Mike, is it was a nice thing to have Sencire Harris as an option off the bench, as just this defensive energy guy. So how does this impact the team without Sencire Harris?
I think it impacts it because we saw games last year where he kind of single-handedly came in and turned the tide. Mm-hmm. I think the UCLA game comes to mind where his energy and his effort, but that energy and effort shouldn't stick out as much if you have a team full of guys that play with energy and effort. So now, like we talked about, if the energy and effort is all level across the board, now you get into some of the real, is he facilitating? Can he shoot the ball? Is he a floor spacer? Is he, and those aren't necessarily his strengths. So I think Sencire was always going to be a guy, if he didn't improve on those things, he was always going to be a guy that was good in those spurts.
Yep.
Right. But I think if you ask Sencire, he wants to be more than a spurt guy. And that's clear as day with him redshirting. There's no question. Because I think he could still be that in certain ways this year. But I've been like blown away by Nico Moretti, but I do like what he brings as like a kind of third option as a point guard. He makes good reads. He's not a poor shooter. Justin Harmon plays hard and is in the right spot and is an older, more experienced guy. And then if Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn is going to play, like I said, with that type of intensity and that type of just fire on a night to night basis, even when he doesn't have it going offensively, which is key, then I don't really know where the minutes are. And I think what's good is, it's the Eric Musselman theory. And I think I've talked about it before. We want, he structures his rosters very deliberately. Now it's kind of changed over the years because he just goes in
portal.
He's waving everybody home. Come on in. But he has, hey, we got our 8 guys that are playing, and then we want 3 guys that are walk-ons and 3 guys that are redshirts. And that's just how he structures it, because 8, 9, 10, or really 9, 10, 11, those are the guys that can kill your locker room.
Yeah.
They just are. So, I'm not saying that would have been Sencire, but it's hard for guys who haven't been in that position, who are getting DNPs or, feeling like they could be playing more. And then you start to try to pull guys with you. You got the 10th, 11th guy telling the 8th or 9th guy he's getting screwed. And, you want to avoid that. And, I think by having that type of structure of your roster, you certainly do avoid that. But, overarching thought is that, yes, he could have helped this team in different ways this year, but they're much more equipped to be without him than they were last year.
So let me ask you this, Mike. I mean, 2021, Illinois has 1 guy left from those 3 prep prospects, right? In Luke Goody. 2022, only 1 of the 4 guys they signed is going to make an impact on this team, and that's Ty Rodgers. Is that a concern of yours?
I think, I guess, yes and no. Yes, because you always want to retain those type of guys. But no, in the sense that, if they weren't doing well in the portal, it would probably be a bigger issue.
Right.
But, I think it's just kind of the nature of college basketball now. And I think maybe seeing that type of turnover over the years could change the way that you recruit, where, of course, you want to go out and get the 5 stars and, the 4.5 stars, 4 stars type guys. But hey, there's a lot of guys when you look around the country that were 3 stars and just really fit what you want to do. And that there's a different expectation for guys that come in. It's like, hey, we really like the way you play, you fit into our system, as opposed to, hey, you're a 5-star guy and now you think you're going to the league and you want the ball in your hands, you want to do this and you want to do that. And it's really hard to mix those guys in with transfers and knocking out of the park in the portal. It's just, that's a really tough mix, and there's going to be some drop off. There just is. Now, I think what you're seeing, another element of that too, and maybe this is like a separate side tangent, but I think they're starting to see a lot of value in getting, like I said, this was a while ago, you and I did this on the pod, but getting the mid-major guys.
Yep.
Because there is a different type of expectation. And when you go and get a high major guy, like I said months and months ago, you go get a high major guy, it's what can I get here that I wasn't getting there? And it's always ball in my hands more. They didn't want me to be a point guard. I want to be a point guard here. I want to do this, do that. It's things that they weren't getting, whereas the mid-major guys are like, I want to test myself at the highest level. I want to play in the NCAA tournament. And they can fit into roles better. So I don't know. That's a roundabout way of answering that question. But
no, it's nuanced. I think you're right, because like this year, I think Illinois would rather have Marcus Domas than RJ Melendez. And RJ might have a good year at Georgia, but he fits better. And as long as you are upgrading or filling those holes, I think you're fine. And I think Illinois has largely done that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll see if the trend continues. The idea is that, you got Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn and Amani Hansberry and Nico Moretti. And I think if you retain all those guys going into next year, that's just a huge, huge plus. Because just the way any program works, if you bring guys into the fold that have been around and that understand your culture, and you're not having to build from the ground up every single year. Now, I think Brad Underwood's done a pretty good job with it. Again, I think they overachieved last year, given how young they were and bringing in guys from the portal. And there were so many new guys, but you do want carryover. It's why Luke Goody, we talked about him, 10 minutes ago, why he's so stable in his role and gives you a comfort as a coach, because you know what you're going to get from him on a night-to-night basis. So yeah, man, it's why the offseason and why everybody's so into the portal, and why everybody's so into who's leaving, who's not leaving, because it can truly shape your program. It can shape what the outlook of your team looks like.
All right, Mike, before I let you go, I want to ask you, speaking of signing classes, Illinois signs Merez Johnson, top 40 prospect. You get Jason Jaxtis, developmental in-state big man, and then Jace Butler, 3-star guard out of California, bigger body, 6'4". What do you make of those guys?
I think they all fit what you want to do. I think Merez is, regardless, every program in the country would want Merez. There's no question about it. And credit him for just sticking with it, right? Those you get worried sometimes with super early signees or super early commits, because there's
back in your day they were all committing early, Mike, and now it's a rarity.
Yeah, because there's more bad than good that can happen, most likely. But he stuck with it. I feel like I always see him at games, which is a good sign, and he seems to already be immersed in what they want to do. And then he's also a guy that you bring in, and he's low maintenance in the sense of he can make a big impact without having to touch the ball a ton. But if he does touch the ball, he can also make a big impact. So you want guys like that. And then, the other two, I think, fill what you want to do. Particularly with Jace, that is a bigger, I think Brad Underwood touched on it, talking about, Dre and some of these other guys are smaller guards. And now you get to maybe put them alongside a bigger body. And he's a guy that can shoot it a little bit, and he can operate in ball screens, and he has good feel. You start to see there's a theme with this. I think the long and versatile theme was prevalent in like 22. And then now it's like, hey, it's, we can do more if we have guys that know how to play basketball and know how to play it regardless of what team they're on or who they're playing with. So I think all three will bring a lot to the table.
All right, Mike, what do you want to see against Oakland heading into a huge matchup against Marquette?
A better start for sure. You can't wait around when the ball comes off the rim. And I'll say this too. I'm going to try to articulate this the best way I can because it's a thought I've been having just watching them against Kansas and then watching them against Eastern Illinois. But did you notice how the cutting and the movement off the ball was better against Kansas than it was against Eastern Illinois? And there's something about when you have bigger, stronger defenders on you, you're almost forced into those cuts. Yeah. It's just a way for you to shake free. It's a way to, as opposed to you having to actively think about it, where it's like, hey, I'm going to make this cut, not because like if you do it against Kansas because you know it's going to free you up. You do it against Eastern Illinois knowing that it might not free you up, but it's just good offense. So when those avenues aren't obvious, still make the cuts. There's a toughness associated with offense, and especially when you want to have an offense predicated on feel and movement and cutting, as opposed to what I saw against EIU was probably more ball screens than they wanted to set. I don't think they want to be a heavy ball screen team. Mm-hmm. They want to be cut, movement, away screens, flares, slips. That's the team they want to be. But if you're going to be that team, you have to make cuts and do these things regardless of whether or not you're being forced into them or not. So that's what I want to see, because it was reminiscent of last year to start that game. Just like 4 guys standing around the arc and no one moving, clogging up lanes. It's like, just somebody make a cut. It was Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. We'll do the film. He made a few good ones, and Harmon made a few good ones. And I mean, it's just you have to bring that every single game, regardless of the opponent. Eliminate the autopilot possessions. Yep. That's what you got to do. Because now heading into Big Ten play, and that's what's been fun too, seeing some of these other teams start off their seasons. But yeah, that's what I want to see, because and then just better, more focus and proactivity defensively, and you'll get off the better starts and feel a little bit more settled.
Yeah, if it becomes a trend of these slow starts against the lower major teams, I will start to get very concerned. Yeah. It is one game, and we saw this across the Big Ten, Mike. This was not just an Illinois issue. Ohio State against Oakland. We saw it. Michigan State, of course, with their loss to Florida Gulf Coast, and Rutgers losing as well. I mean, it's kind of, this is why you have these bye games early. It just, you wish you didn't have to do that with a team that has so many veterans.
Yeah, no, it's amazing seeing just across the Big Ten. Sometimes you get so focused on Illinois' struggles or Illinois' successes that getting that full Big Ten picture is always important, because right now it looks like Purdue's kind of in a class of their own. And I get it was Samford, but I just, if Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer are going to take those big leaps, that team becomes even more dangerous. So I know I said before, like, hey, Purdue, Illinois might be closer to that top, and Maryland's kind of up there too. I thought Michigan was impressive. Mm-hmm. But again, that's UNC Asheville. So, what are they going to look like against some of these other teams as well? And then Wisconsin, I think, broke a school record for points in a game, non-con game. But I'm looking at AJ Storr, and I'm like, have they had anyone like that since Michael Finley?
Right.
Right. Like a kind of dynamic wing 2-guard. It should be exciting this year. I know it kind of feels like the Big Ten got the wind taken out of their sails with Michigan State being so highly touted preseason and then losing to James Madison. You know how I feel about that. I've been banging that drum since.
Yeah, and I forgot it was Indiana for the Gulf Coast that they got pushed by. So yeah, I mean, two teams that I know you were really skeptical of Michigan State. I thought I was high on Michigan State coming in, and then I saw everyone else was even higher. So I still thought they were going to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I mean, they still could be, but if you watch that game against James Madison, the things that I've been talking about on the podcast or on radio, they were all on display. I truly think they lost their best player. Mm-hmm. Joey Hauser, when you talk about a 45% 3-point shooter and your leading rebounder, guy who's great positionally, defensively, and when you're a heavy ball screen team, not having a guy that can space it, you are putting a lot of strain on whether or not shooting the ball is going to dictate you winning games. And I said that because it's a 7 seed from the NCAA. How many times are we going to keep doing this? 7 seed from the NCAA tournament that finished 9-9 last season, and we made them a top 5 team nationally. I don't. You did it to North Carolina 2 years ago. 8 seed, they go to the Final Four, they beat St. Peter's, and you're like, oh wow, they return all these guys. Number 1 team in the country, and look how that season ended up.
Did it to Indiana a year ago as well?
Yeah, Indiana, same thing. The difference with Indiana is 9-11 in the Big Ten. And then I said it. I was like, well, we'll see how good Jalen Hood-Schifino and Malik Renew are.
Yeah.
And they were both super additive for them. And it raised their floor, it raised their ceiling. Michigan State, it's the same dudes. You didn't rely on Fears a whole lot. You definitely didn't rely on Booker very much. Cohen Carr was probably made one of the biggest impacts for freshmen. And he's just kind of like deer in the headlights running around and just an uber crazy athlete. And Tyson Walker was insane.
Right.
But we know about Tyson Walker. We know about AJ Hogger. We know about Matty Sissoko and Jaden Akins. So I think they could they're still right up there in the Big Ten, but certainly some concerns that we had talked about were on display. They weren't good around the rim last year, and I think they were 50% on layups in that game too.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out.
We're going to do a film room breaking down Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, but Michael LaTulip, the next time we catch up on the podcast, we're going to know a lot more about Illinois with Oakland and then Marquette coming to town early next week. Thanks for the time as always, man.
All right, man.